All right, good morning, everybody. Quick update on my status. I did test positive for COVID, so unfortunately, I will be out of school until a week from today. So the 10th, December 10th, is the first day that I am allowed to come back to school. So you guys will continue to have subs through most of next week. I have talked to Dr. Cochran about trying to get actual subs in the room. I know that so far this week, before today at least, you've been in the comments twice. I'm trying to make sure that doesn't happen again so that you guys can have at least a real sub and actually have better lesson plans. I'm going to continue to try to do my best with the lessons while I am gone so you guys can continue to learn. But quite frankly, it's going to take a little bit of extra effort on your part to make sure that you're focused in class, that you're reading all directions carefully, and doing everything thoroughly that I assign instead of going through it quickly. Just a reminder that everything that we do today and through this next couple of classes when I'm out will be on the final, and we will have a quiz on it. So just make sure that you guys are keeping up. With that in mind, today we're going to talk about immigration. I'm going to lecture today. I've been meaning to do this since Tuesday, the first day that I've been out, but haven't obviously been there to do it, and I think a couple of videos here is the best way to get through this information. So there will be a break in between, but I will let you know that notes on this lecture are part of the homework packet, so make sure that you guys have your notebooks out if you don't already. So if you don't, go ahead and pause right now, get your notebooks out so you can take notes as we go. Okay, here we go. We'll talk about immigration here during the Gilded Age. Now, the first thing we're going to do is compare the old wave of immigration that we had previously talked about to the new. So let's start with the old immigration. This is those immigrants that start coming in the 1830s. We talked about it around the time we talked about Andrew Jackson. Now, this wave of immigrants are what I would say are from nations that are very similar to the United States. When we look at English and the Irish, there's very little language barrier there at all, if any, obviously speaking the same language. And with the Germans coming over, it's similar culturally, it's similar language as well. German is and English are both have the same root, language root. They're both Germanic languages. And as someone who speaks German myself, I can say it's a little easier to pick up as an English speaker, someone who speaks a Germanic language like English as opposed to a Romance language like French. But the English, Irish, and Germans are also more culturally like Americans than just about any other European country. They all are Protestant religiously, um, and share a lot of the same values as we do here in the United States. So while any time you are leaving your country and coming to a new one with very little in hand is difficult, this old wave of immigrants didn't have the hardest time assimilating into United States culture, particularly the English, as that's the root of our country. So the old immigrants had an okay time getting to the United States and thriving, much like the Bush family, the Anheuser-Busch family here in St. Louis. But you see up at the top, around this time, this old wave of immigrants, we're getting about 2 million per decade, which is a lot, but not a whole bunch. But we're going to see a pretty massive increase in immigration in the 80s to the 1900s and beyond. And we're going to call this the new wave of immigration. You can see it goes up about 5 million immigrants per decade. So there's going to be this wave of immigration as the Civil War concludes and as Reconstruction concludes. There's going to be a wave of immigrants coming into the United States primarily because of the industrialization that's going on. Immigrants are coming because there is no land to be had, and there is land in the United States. The Homestead Act is going, right? So you can potentially get some land out west. Now, the problem is that a lot of these immigrants didn't have the resources to get out west. So while they may have heard about the land or maybe heard about these job opportunities, a lot of them were forced to stay relatively close to where they land in the United States, which is going to be New York. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. But this new wave of immigration is completely different than the old wave of immigration. Instead of the English, Irish, and Germans, we have Italians. We have people from Eastern Europe, like Russia and Austria Hungary. And there are a lot of people of the Jewish faith coming over. And the big difference here is that this new wave of immigration is not very culturally similar to the United States. So they're going to have a more difficult time assimilating or fitting in the United States. They're going to speak drastically different languages, Baltic languages. or Italian, for example, right, which is a Romance language, definitely different than the Germanic language of English and German. Um, these new wave of immigrants oftentimes aren't Protestant like we are here in the United States. Italians are Catholic, Jewish faith, or that's obviously Jewish. Eastern European countries are mostly Orthodox. So we have culturally different people. We have people who speak significantly different languages, and even have significantly different views on government as well. Uh, when we start talking about the Eastern European countries, this is an area that is just prior to the Communist Revolution. Remember, that happens in 1918. So you have some of those socialist and communist ideas coming out of the Eastern European countries as well. So this is all to wrap up is to say that this new wave of immigrants is going to be completely different than what we have seen in immigrants before, and completely different from us as Americans. And that's going to lead to some problems. So let's just visualize this graph here really quickly. I told you that there was this big boom of immigration, right? So you can see the blue line here. The blue line is the new wave of immigration, and you can see through the 1880s they start to increase the amount of immigrants entering the country, and then by the 1990s, you see the new wave has taken over into the 1900s, where that new wave of immigrants is dominating over the traditional old wave of immigrants of England, Ireland, and Germany. Now, I just referenced some problems, and one of the biggest problems, this new wave of immigrants, because of their complete differentness from Americans for the most part, they're going to run into the strong anti-foreigners sort of attitude, and this is called nativism. We've discussed this word before. Another word for it would be xenophobia. Phobia is a fear of. The xeno part means people from other nations, immigrants. So fear of immigrants. And this is going to plague immigrants through this new wave of immigrants because of just how different they are. Americans are going to be distrustful of them, and they are going to use them as a scapegoat for a lot of the problems that are happening during the Gilded Age. We had already sort of discussed the Gilded Age as sort of the shiny on the outside, kind of rotten on the inside. And a lot of that rot on the inside, Americans are going to sort of push and blame on immigrants and say it's their fault. So, for example, we'll get into this towards the end of the lecture today, but city corruption is a bad problem during this time period, and immigrants are going to be blamed for that. Immigrants are able to, or willing to work for just what they're considered starvation wages. They're willing to work for low wages because they have nothing, and they'll take whatever they can get. And so American workers, particularly workers in unions, really disliked immigrants because they drove down wages. If a union American worker, for example, and this is just making up numbers for easiness, but if they got paid $10 an hour, maybe an immigrant was willing to work for six. And so the employers would start lowering their wages, and they were already low to begin with, right? So union workers start to attack these immigrants because they kind of drive down salaries because they're willing to work for less than what most people would otherwise. Um, and then, like I talked about, a lot of these immigrants are bringing over maybe some radical ideas. You guys saw the strikes from last class. And in some of those strikes, immigrants are blamed for them, like the Haymarket Square bombing, because of some of the radical ideas they bring over. The anarchism is an idea, the lack of government, right? This idea of socialism or communism, which still today these are sort of dirty words in America, right? And so a lot of these radical beliefs about government are also going to be blamed on immigrants. So they're going to have a really tough time making a go of it here in the United States. So we're going to take a break here. So the idea today is I'm going to record two different lecture videos to try to break it up for you a little bit. But I have this little activity in between, hopefully, so things don't get too boring with you guys just watching videos of me talking over slides. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to need one of your table partners to help you out here. So find one of your people at your table to partner up with. And on the next three slides, we're going to see three different political cartoons. And one partner will analyze the cartoons. We'll sort of verbally talk through the cartoon and analyze it while the other partner listens. The partner that's listening should pose sort of feedback questions or just clarifying questions as they go. So what do you think about this? Or couldn't this be something here? So essentially, you're going to have a short conversation about some of these cartoons. But in this sort of style where one person is mostly doing the analyzing and the other person is mostly doing the listening and providing some feedback. So like I said, there are three cartoons. So you guys can switch back and forth on who's the analyzer and who's the listener on the three cartoons. Uh, and then you can skip number three without me being here. Don't worry about sharing out your cartoons with the rest of class, but I do want you guys to make sure that you're going through all three cartoons with your partner. You can do this in about probably 2 or 3 minutes. It says 3 or 4. We could probably do this in 2 or 3 for each cartoon. I would like it if we spent about 10, maybe 12 minutes total on this activity here before getting into the second part of the lecture. Okay. Really quickly, I'm just going to just overview each cartoon just very briefly before you guys hop into this assignment here. Now, when you do this, you're obviously going to need the PowerPoint open. So if once you guys figure out who your partners are and you don't have it open already, you might want to pause the video, go to Canvas, and open up the PowerPoint for today so you guys can have the large versions of these cartoons. All right, here we go. First one. You can sort of see what's going on here. This flag over here, it might be a little hard to read, says European garbage ship. All right. The proposed immigrant dumping site is the name of the cartoon. And then there's this text down here. And here's what the text says over on the side. It's the Statue of Liberty talking. And it says, if you are going to make this island a garbage heap, I'm going back to France. All right. So you can sort of see this one's sort of an easier one to start out with. I really love this cartoon. This is one of my favorites, and it's called Welcome to All. You can see at the bottom. There are two main signs here that have some text that are hard to read, so I'll go ahead and read those for you. This first one here by Uncle Sam reads, free education, free land, free speech, free ballot, free lunch. Okay, so that's this one here. And then this one's a little easier to read here, the one in the middle. You can see its text here, no oppressive taxes, no excessive kings, right? So you guys can look into that text there. Be very careful to look at everything that's going on in this cartoon. All of the people, you might want to analyze them. Just check out what's going on. There's a lot going on in this one. And then our last one here, this is called Uncle Sam's Lodging House, as you see at the bottom. And then you can see the text there. This is Uncle Sam saying to the Irishman. You can see the Irish flag right here. Look here, you, everyone else is quiet and peaceable, and you're just all the time kicking up a row, meaning he's being a problem. So this is our third question, or our third cartoon, and then it has this question here at the bottom for you to consider and talk about once you guys have gone through. All right, so like I said, go through these three cartoons, please, with your table partners, with one person verbally analyzing them while the other listens and provides feedback. And then once you are finished with that, hopefully taking about 10 to 12 minutes, you can go ahead and open up the second lecture video for today. All right, thanks, guys.